Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are the mid-strength Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Yes, the healthier and responsible version of Unnatural Selection without the extra spice of Tom Heath.
The low-carb Unnatural Selection.
Yes, yeah, there's no eating the rich just yet. I mean, maybe if we have
Not yet.
Maybe if we have enough mid-strength Unnatural Selection, then we will be eating the rich by the end of the show. We'll see. We'll see how this develops.
Stay tuned.
If you don't drink beer, a lot of that is completely over the top of your heads. But we're a news and politics podcast, and hopefully we'll give you a laugh or two in between the despair that you're sure to experience with the stories we're about to cover.
Selling it. So first off, we have a clip from one Mark Carney, who talks a little bit about sort of the rupturing world order and what it means for you. So let's have a listen. I've for clarity, I've edited this down for brevity, but I would encourage you to watch the full speech. We'll have the link posted in the show notes.
That we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. Argue the middle powers must act together, because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. But I'd also say that great powers can afford for now to go it alone. They have the market size, the military capacity, and the leverage to dictate terms. Middle powers do not. But when we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Nostalgia is not a strategy. That's a strong way to end a public speech at the World Economic Forum, I'd have to say. But yeah, basically what he's talking about there is just sort of more or less acknowledging that the world order, if it ever existed, doesn't exist anymore. And,
Well,
you know, the middle powers got to form their own UN.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was, a lot. We talked about a bit about it last week, and we talked about that. A lot of other stuff was said at the World Economic Forum as well, and this sort of comes. It was sort of fresh off the heels of Trump basically threatening to tariff half of Europe, half of NATO, for the whole Greenland situation. So it was the sort of the first global opportunity, I guess, for world leaders to sort of rally around and rebuke a lot of those claims. Basically, for those who aren't aware, who have been living under a rock, Trump's, doubling down on his Greenland rhetoric. Although, it's sort of dropped out of the headlines again this week, I guess.
I mean, they've sort of backed down to a certain extent. They saw how the Europeans, sort of put together this, they called it the trade bazooka, which is like, in case of emergency, hit the big red button and basically stop all economic activity with the United States. And saw that the bond markets were freaking out, the stock market was freaking out. Yeah. So now he's not talking about Greenland so much. He's accepted a little proposal to, have some mining rights and own the land underneath
the bases.
The bases, which are already there, which they already kind of do.
So like a long-term lease. Anyway, it's confusing. But yeah, I mean, it was Mark Carney's speech itself was sort of lauded last week as being sort of one of those key sort of international speeches that sort of set the ground or the tone sort of moving forward. As I mentioned last week, Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, which, you're like, why is the governor of California at Davos? Well, California by itself would be...
Because he's running for president.
Well, there's also that.
Presumably.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be, right?
Just love hanging out in Iowa with the farmers. Just love hanging out with the pig farmers, do you, Gavin?
This is like several hundred kilometres away from where your electorate is. But yeah.
City slicker Gavin Newsom. Yeah, just hanging out in New Hampshire, just chilling with the farmers.
California has, if it was to have its own economy, is like the world's top, the world's top 10
fifth largest or something. Yeah.
So
just California by itself.
He was there, literally just spraying shit everywhere, basically calling all of the European leaders to man up or not man up, but to basically, harden their resolve and their defense against Trump to stop acquiescing, and then was dropping other sort of being a bit of a messy bitch about Trump in general.
Just a lot of messy bitches on today's episode. Yes, we'll come back to Malcolm Turnbull later.
Yes. So, Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, was asked about it a couple of days afterwards, and he was like, well, I already actually... The way for Albanese tried to phrase it was like, oh, well, I actually called for this at the last UN General Assembly. That was actually the thrust of my speech, so we're in alignment.
Yeah,
I'm like,
not
oh,
really.
As if, okay. So, like, way to sort of steal the idea, Anthony. Anyway, so yes, I mean, the concept being here is, in a fractured world order, in a multipolar world, if you're a middle power like Canada, Australia, Denmark, all these sort of countries that have got a reasonably high GDP but aren't sort of in the top,
But they're not
five
the hegemons. Yeah. They're not China. They're not, the US.
Yeah. That they form their own sort of coalition, which is, it's funny because like this kind of already happened with the European Union. So it's like, well, like...
And like the G20 and stuff, like there are sort of like, and there have been attempts at forming other kind of like middle power blocks in the past for this sort of purpose. So like, I don't really know how it would work in practice. And I think there are multilateral organizations that exist already that kind of serve that purpose to a certain degree. But I think the fact that it's Mark Carney, who's like the institutionalist who's saying these things, is the thing that's...
Canadian federal banker that's like,
former central banker, Canadian Prime Minister, he's the kind of guy who would be swanning around Davos and these sorts of things in the past. For him to say that, bilateral cooperation with the United States is essentially acquiescing to tyranny is pretty amazing. Got a big set of Canadian maple balls on them, this guy. I don't know if I'd want to be him necessarily, but...
It's funny because like they did speak after that. Or Trump also got up in Davos and had a speech and said a bunch of inflammatory shit. But Carney and Trump did speak over the phone, I think, after that. And, Trump apparently the conversation went quite well, which seems to be an interesting trend I've noticed in that publicly he'll have spats with people and take a bunch of, actions, but like in other ones, the New York mayor, for instance,
Zoran Mamdani,
diametrically opposed, and then the week
it's okay, you can call me a fascist, it's easier, I don't mind, what a handsome guy. Yeah,
the next week they're in there like kissing each other.
It's weird. It's so funny, like the only thing that Donald understands is Donald, we're on a first name basis. The only thing that Trump understands is like shows of strength and popularity. And he's like, he looks good on the TV. He's incredible, an incredible performer. And then all of a sudden, that's all you need to do. So this whole thing that the Europeans have been doing of like kissing up to him and going, Donald, you're so daddy. You're such a big man, Donald. Like all this, the stuff that whatever that guy was who was calling him daddy. Was a former
NATO,
Danish
the NATO,
the NATO guy.
Secretary
Yeah, that's
General.
right. Yeah, Rutte, Mark Rutte.
Yeah.
Where he's, Donald, you're such a big daddy. You've got such a big dong, Donald. Like all of that stuff
Not a
clearly
direct
doesn't
quote,
work.
but he did call him daddy.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Did call him daddy. That is a direct quote. That's verbatim. Like all of that stuff, and this sort of softly approach that the Europeans have been taking with Donald, where, they send him an invite to hang out with the king and like all this kind of like horse shit. It's like none of that works. He doesn't give a shit about any of that. What he gives a shit about is strength and power and how you look on TV. That's the only reason Pete Hegseth is Secretary of Defense, is because he looks like if you were casting him in a movie, he would be the guy who's the Secretary of Defense, not because he is qualified.
Just like
right?
Tulsi Gabbard with her one white streak of hair is basically
her
an X-Men.
rogue from X-Men looking fucking thing that she's doing. It's just, it's really interesting to see how, and the Europeans they do have a good amount of finance. Like as a bloc, the European Union has some of the largest financial institutions in the world, in London, and like Deutsche Bank, Germany, and like things like that. Like Germany, like they are a force to be reckoned with if taken as a bloc as a whole. So
even the Italian economy, for the shambles that it is still like in the world's top 10, I think, from memory.
Yeah, they do all the cheese, all the balsamic vinegar, all the Ferraris. There's like a handful of things that the Italians do really well.
Yeah.
But they're like Italy, very decently sized economy. There's equivalent economy size to Russia, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, the idea that the Europeans as a bloc couldn't like push back against the US if they wanted to, as they have over Greenland, like shows that, when you do push back, you can get results. Like if the Europeans and all these other countries stop buying American government debt, the US economy grinds to a halt because
that was the story.
Spend more than they make all the time, constantly.
That was the
and
story.
If they're not getting all this cheap debt in, the country stops.
That was the story underneath the story this week, was that the US bond market flipped a little bit again, and this is the second or third time that's happened.
They call them bond vigilantes.
Yeah.
This is true. Where it's like the people who control the bond markets, who control the flows of capital, basically kind of de facto get to decide government policy, because if without the flow of debt, the country ceases to function. So you saw a big dip in the Dow when Trump was saying, we're going to go invade Greenland. It's going to be incredible. All the minerals, all the critical mineral. And then the markets freaked out. The bond markets freaked out. The stock market freaked out. All of Trump and his money is tied up in stock markets and crypto, and all the tech bros, all of their money is tied up in the stock market. So he's got a bunch of rich friends on the phone to him. Elon's going, Donald, I don't think you have really thought about what's going on there. Like, all it needs is a couple of rich assholes to go, hey, Donald, fucking stop it. And he will. So, like, clearly this provides an access point for Democrats and anyone else who's looking to push back against Donald Trump to say, hey, like, this is something we can do to him where we can hit him where it hurts. And where is it? Obviously, his money. That's what he cares about. So, it's it's interesting.
I mean, like, there's been other things this week on the world stage as other examples of this. So I think India just signed a massive trade deal, and I've forgotten the country, with the EU. So the EU and India...
There was one with Canada as well. Oh, sorry. Check Canada and China was the one I was thinking about. Sorry,
so that was the one that Mark Carney was talking up at Davos. So this week, since Davos, the EU, which, again, as a bloc, is, like, huge, economically speaking, have signed a free trade deal with India. So that's a massive deal. So you can see that there are... I mean, I would suspect we've kind of got to Davos as like an inflection point, but I would suggest, Davos is really just what we're seeing at the end of the process. I assume there've actually been lots of activities over the last 6 months. These trade deals don't just pop up out of nowhere, right?
Despite what Trump says, you can't just like whiz it up 100 deals in 100 days.
No.
Like these are extensive, bilateral negotiation processes which take place over months. And when we hear about them is when they are all hammered out and then formally announced on the world stage at key times, right?
Correct. So, while Mark Carney's speech is prescient and particularly given all the stuff happening in Greenland, well-timed, I would suspect that, would he have made that same speech if Greenland wasn't being discussed? Probably.
Possibly, but it wouldn't have been as salient. It wouldn't have hit as hard.
Yeah.
But what it shows is that there's a concerted effort from middle powers that have recognized that Trump is lost his fucking mind. That Trump has lost his mind, and that they need to do something to push back against it. As you say, you wouldn't make that speech if you hadn't had at least a couple of months of preparation leading up to it.
And he knows they've got to deal with China.
The consequences, and he knows he's got to deal with China in his pocket and these other things to go. So if they do get sanctioned by the US, they've got this other thing that might be able to potentially ameliorate it. He's diversifying, right? That's what a banker does, right?
Diversify your risk. Make sure that, and that's exactly what he talked about in his speech. What I found interesting about his speech was he talked about the world order, which is, Australia clings to this world order like it's,
love the world order. We've been humping the world order for decades now.
Mark Carney was interesting, and he said that, the world order was he sort of pointed to the fact that we all sort of knew it was a bit of a rigged game, but which is crazy. But we all benefited from it, so we just went along.
We were happy to believe the lie as long as we were benefiting from it, and now we're not benefiting from it anymore. So it's like,
take the sign out of the window, right?
Take the sign out of the window. That was the pull quote. So it's it is interesting. They're like, well, when we were on the side of the hegemon, it was pretty good, but turns out that's actually not a good strategy in case the hegemon is led by misanthropic narcissist, right?
And economically is one thing. The thing that the US has in its back pocket, of course, is the military aspect, right? So,
if behind every banker stands a man with a gun, right? That's from David Graeber. It's like the way that the US has been able to enforce this hegemony and bully people with tariffs and sanctions and all this sort of stuff is because the most powerful military in the world sits behind them with a loaded gun, saying, if you don't fucking do this, we'll Maduro you, right?
Yeah.
We'll come in and take over, and that's what the whole. But as I've said on the show before, the term "banana republic" comes from a time in, I think it was the 1800s, where the US invaded some Caribbean nation, and took over the government to guarantee their supply of bananas. They were like, we don't like how your country's being run because it affects us economically, so we're going to fucking take it over. Gunboat diplomacy, right?
And the British used to do that as well. I guess the thing at the moment is that, yes, Trump will listen to the financial aspect. At the end of the day, though, the Europeans need to be a little bit careful because they do need the American support for Ukraine.
And they're integrated with all their military systems and all this sort of stuff.
NATO,
they're buying all this American military hardware for the Ukraine conflict.
The key question is, and Mark Rutte, or Root, whatever his name is, the Secretary General of NATO, has basically said that, while it's all well and good for the Europeans to show more independence, NATO probably cannot function as an effective deterrent without the US. That was kind of his point. I don't know. It probably depends on a number of factors, but Australia, I guess what I'm leading to here is Australia, unfortunately, militarily, we are now, because of AUKUS, because of the F-35s, most of our other military hardware and defence contracts are coming directly from the United States, and the level of investment and sort of the dice we have rolled and the bet we have placed is now firmly in that camp. So we are at a point where if we want to pull out of that or try to show some more independence, we're at a sort of, we're kind of cooked, really. We've backed ourselves into a corner.
We've really spent the last couple of decades aligning ourselves very heavily with the US against China, and with the reintroduction of Trump, that is proving to be less and less of a good bet. You know, like if we're really integrated with this country, this is exactly what Carney was talking about in his speech. To be integrated with a hegemon so deeply that they can just bully you to get them to do whatever the fuck they want to do to you isn't sovereignty anymore.
Yeah.
It's the performance of sovereignty. You're just becoming a vassal state of the hegemon by interacting with them in this manner. And Australia's going to be in a really difficult position because geographically, we're much closer to China. China's our largest trading partner. We did $218 billion with a B billion dollars worth of trade with them last year. So, you know, to be all in on the Americans, especially as they descend into fascism, like it's probably not a very solid bet.
I mean, it's been the key tenet of Australian defence policy since the 1950s.
Because the Americans are always reliable.
Yeah, because the 1950s, since the World War II, really, there was that inflection point where,
you know, we've got their soldiers at Pine Gap where they're listening post on this side of the world, and you know, we're a reliable.
They can use our bases,
you know, partner for a Pacific, you know, sort of
the Marines,
jumping
there's
off
a Marine,
point, and
you know, I don't know if it's a full Marine Expeditionary Unit, but like a full, you know, thousands of US troops in Darwin. So we're tied in at this point from a security perspective, but you know, I think it'll be interesting to see what the next defence white paper says, right? Where on all this,
everything's good. Don't worry about it.
Love a good defence white paper. Said no one ever. Anyway, so that's what's happening internationally. Domestically, Trump just really can't. I mean, there's a lot of things happening domestically in the US, but like the one thing that we're going to point out here is he just doesn't want to let go the election losses.
Yeah, so yeah, obviously there's some stuff happening in Minnesota. You'll probably end up talking about it more next week once it develops a little bit more. Like Tom Homan has been brought in to replace Greg Bovino, one-third Reich Greg Bovino, as the person who's leading the operation in Minnesota.
Just a sidebar. I know this is way off track. Greg Bovino.
Yeah,
you've seen, and I'm assuming some of our listeners have also seen One Battle After Another.
Yes, he is literally Sean Penn's character from One Battle After Another, 100%.
Put them side by side. I don't want to say that they're the same person. There's just some similarities with the look, and we'll post this up in the on your screen for the recording.
I'm trying to see if I can.
But I don't want to say that.
Oh my God, someone's Daily Mail already has a side by side. Daily Mail
are
purveyors of quality. Purveyors of quality information. Here it is. So Greg Bovino alongside Sean Penn's character in One Battle After Another. This is obviously going to be a very visual gag. But I'm just going to beg you to trust me. Look at that. Look at these fucking guys. They're the same fucking guy. What the fuck?
The reason why this is important is that one of the key plot points, I'm not really spoiling anything, for One Battle After Another is that Sean Penn's character is kind of the equivalent of Bovino.
A right-wing military sort of fascist hard-ass guy, right?
Working for some sort of border army, I don't know, organisation. It's not clear sort of what departments he's from. But
fascist military, department.
Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to point that out. Watch the movie. It's a great film.
Life imitates art. Indeed. Yeah, and so Greg Bovino's gotten the ass because he's been, sort of the one that's been heading up this federal government occupation of Minnesota, which Trump has seen on TV is not playing well after the murders of both Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And so he's been booted. And so it's so weird that it's a relief.
It's just like
they've
swapped one white guy for another white guy.
And Tom Homan's like, we're going to back down on our presence in Minnesota, and Trump was like, no, you're not. So
nothing's actually happened. Like, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't watched the latest updates for the last, 48 hours. But as far as I'm aware, nothing's really changed on the ground in terms of their presence. I could be wrong.
No,
I don't think it has.
Not so much. And it's interesting that the great white hope of Minnesota is the guy who allegedly took $50,000 from the FBI as a potential bribe. That's the guy that we're all going, oh, thank God. The slightly less insane and corrupt guy is here to save us, right? Unreal.
Anyway, another world. So
that's not even the story.
Not even the story. No,
that's an aside. We'll check back in on that whole shit show next week. But there has been a development in the very timely and pressing case of the 2020 Georgia election ballots.
Ah, yes,
Huh?
2020.
2020.
My favorite year.
2020. And what does that have to do with the America of 2026 in the year of our Lord, you might ask? Well, in extraordinary scenes this week, FBI agents left a warehouse south of Atlanta, Georgia, with hundreds of boxes containing ballots and other documents related to the 2020 presidential election. Why? No reason. Federal authorities have not revealed the purpose of the search and seizure, and the warrant is under seal. However, it is believed to be a new effort from the Trump administration to prosecute its false claims that voter fraud in Georgia led to a Democratic victory. So they served this search warrant this Wednesday. They cover sheet for the warrant included a list of items that the agents were seeking. According to the Associated Press, this includes these kinds of documents, all ballots, just all of them, give us all of the ballots, tabulated tapes from scanners that tally the votes, electronic ballot images created when ballots are counted and recounted, and, crucially, all electoral rolls. Give us your data, please. I would like to know who you are, where you are, who you voted for, and when. No reason, just building a list for no reason. The sort of cool and normal thing that federal governments do.
Now, Trump did flag this at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he did say something, he basically alleged that charges related to 2020 election results in Fulton County were incoming. Fulton County is a county within Georgia, and it is one of the key areas
encompasses Atlanta, very, very Democratic, very black, right?
Yes, one of the key areas that was pointed out by Trump's team in 2020 as alleging that there was voter fraud there, which has been completely unsubstantiated and in many ways proven not to have taken place by the companies running that election.
Yeah, and they'd successfully sued over it, like a Dominion Voting Systems, successfully sued Fox News over these allegations, and that's all been adjudicated.
And to the point,
there's no evidence to prove that anything untoward happened.
To the point where Trump was, as it turns out, charged with a crime
in Fulton County,
was taken in, got a mugshot, left the county jail on bail for $312,000 and then turns out he becomes president, and the charges are dropped.
Don't worry about it. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. Forget it. Come on. Hey, come on.
Some might say Trump has, a personal stake in this, but given those charges,
it seems like blatant retribution for you come after me, I'm going to come after you. What was interesting to me, though, was that, speaking of Tulsi Gabbard, as we were earlier, the Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, was seen at this facility while the raid was occurring, despite not being part of the FBI or other federal law enforcement authorities. And it seems as though this is a little project that Trump has delegated to Tulsi to get her back in the tent, because she was in the icebox for a little while, as you might recall, after that weird nuclear bomb video that she posted saying that some people think that they can go to their bunkers and be safe, but just so you know, nuclear war is really bad. And Trump was like, what the fuck?
I'm here in Tokyo. Oh, no, in Hiroshima. She actually visited, anyway. But
why?
Hiroshima.
Anyway, so she's been in the icebox since then, and then Trump's gone, let's give a little project to Tulsi. Let's see if we can get her back in the fold, right? So this is her way of, sort of getting back in good with Daddy Trump, is to try and help, validate and whitewash his, sort of 2020 election. It's it's over, dude. That presidential term is over, and then you won the next one. He's such a petty bitch.
Yes.
Why are you still thinking about this, you fucking loser?
This is one of those things that, when you get older, you do tend to dwell on
ruminate,
things, right? Whether it's a cognitive thing or whether it's just getting old.
I do genuinely believe he is losing his mind.
For sure.
He's nearly 80 at this point, and he's getting increasingly unhinged.
Tulsi Gabbard, just to circle back on that, I think actually where she started to go on the out was when he struck Iran's nuclear facilities. I think from that point, I think she sort of started to go on the back burner because there were disagreements over the effect and
Like don't bomb the country that's got nukes. Well, that maybe has nukes and definitely would use them against the United States if they had them.
So that was part of it. But then the other thing was like, there was the conflicting damage impact assessments and like, how quickly can they rebuild their nuclear facilities?
Yeah, she didn't fall in line. She was releasing stuff that was accurate, and Trump's like, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah. And it's throughout this whole last, I want to say like 4 months, you haven't really heard much of a peep out of her from a global standpoint. I mean, maybe that's fair enough. As a director of national intelligence, you probably don't want to be
busy with other atrocities of late,
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming she was involved in Venezuela, and as the director of national intelligence, you'll probably not be front and center because spy shit
it's not typically
is meant to be behind the scenes.
Client-facing. It's not a client-facing role.
Exactly.
Your job is meetings, not, Well, I mean, I was going to say, unlike Kristi Noem, whose job is, as it seems to be, like getting in front of the camera and, like posing with guns that are accidentally pointed at her colleagues' heads.
Just
but
holding them really weirdly, like it's a baby.
Holding weird, just like clearly someone who's never held a fucking gun. Like,
I reckon she would have done. It's Kristi Noem. She rides horses and shit. Sure.
Well, we know she killed a dog, so we know she's held a gun at least once.
But just holding it like a baby? It was very weird. Anyway,
the point was Kristi Noem's job is meant to be just meetings, and here she has like out riding horses on fucking social media. Who knows?
Is out of control. There's a whole nother skit there that we need to do.
In fucking full tack gear with like 20-inch hair extensions on. I was just like, what the fuck? What am I watching right now?
That could kill.
Apparently, she's fucking Corey Lewandowski.
That is
Trump's former campaign.
This is allegedly. This is just discussions on the interweb. We're not inferring
This is the tea.
anything. We're not insinuating anything. This is something that George has read. Just to be very
I've
clear.
heard it's been said many times that she's fucking Corey Lewandowski, allegedly.
I don't know who Corey Lewandowski is, but
the former Trump campaign, I think he was the campaign chair or something like that. He was running one of Trump's campaigns back in the day. He had a role in the government, I believe, but then was like swiftly pushed out. There was a whole thing about how
what websites are you
manhandled a reporter.
To get that info? Are you looking at this is the kind of thing that the Daily Mail would report on.
Page 6 of the Daily Mail. No, it's just like, it's one of those things that you just sort of seeps in through osmosis that, through all the different podcasts that I listen to about this shit.
The Reddit forums.
Yeah, unsourced. Let's just say unsourced reports.
Correct.
Yeah, I have not got two sources to confirm that.
Anyway,
but ew, both of them.
Yeah,
ew for both of them. Ew.
But yeah, I guess just to get back to what we're actually talking about, because I would like to go into a whole comedy skit analysis of like how her social media in turn.
You could do a whole episode just on Kristi Noem's fucking social media, legitimately.
I want to unpack it. I want to
a multi-part series. I want to do a Ken Burns 8-part documentary series on Kristi Noem's social media.
God. It would be the best. Okay. So Tulsi Gabbard
/ the worst.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard at the side of this investigation for these votes that they're collecting or whatever. I guess the inference that you could draw here, which again is speculation, but the concept of her providing some sort of depends what they come out with, but perhaps the thread that they will be going with will be, there was definitely some interference in this county.
That's why we got to confiscate the voter rolls. That's why we got to call off the midterms.
Yeah, because the midterms.
A senior administration official said in a statement that Ms. Gabbard has a, quote, pivotal role in election security and protecting the integrity of our elections against interference, including operations targeting voting systems, databases, and election infrastructure. So that's from the administration, right? So that's not even really reading between the lines there.
No.
Like when they talk about election security and preventing interference and all that sort of shit, it's clearly as a pretext for what they want to do, which is interfere with the elections. Like every accusation is an admission on their part. And that's from the administration. So like we're not reading between the lines. We're just reading the lines here.
So that's happening in Fulham County in Georgia. We'll see. They haven't announced anything officially yet, so that'll be next week's story.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for how democracy is disintegrating in the EU.
Yeah. Again, don't want to say it's fascism. It's definitely fascistic.
It's fashy. It's real fashy.
Real fashy. Let's call.
Speaking of fashy,
Yep.
I learned this week that in Pam Bondi's letter to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, in the wake of the Alex Preddy shooting, that essentially Pam Bondi sent a letter to Tim Walz, which laid out the conditions for scaling back deportation operations in Minnesota, which included demands that the state give federal government access to the federal government access to its voter rolls, turn over state Medicaid and food assistance records, and repeal sanctuary city policies. So, to me, that just lays bare that this is never about immigration. It was never about, deporting violent illegals, the bad hombres. It was never about any of that shit. It was always about terrorizing democratic cities. And if we can use that as leverage to get information, again, the voter rolls, the votes, social security numbers, who goes where, we can feed it into the fucking Palantir panopticon. And then when we fucking launch the full surveillance state, we'll have plenty of data on which to train it, right?
It's setting them. They're taking a quote unquote retreat on this one to be able to win the war in the long game, right? Like,
what does the voter rolls have to do with immigration enforcement in Minnesota?
Nothing. Absolutely
Literally nothing.
Because if you are after immigration enforcement, in theory, those people would not be able to vote, right?
By definition.
So why do you
because
want
they're
those?
not citizens.
Are you implying that immigrants are voting? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Oh, I'm sure there's some right-wing conspiracy fever dream where they're saying that, but they're not. So clearly it's not about immigration enforcement. It's about terrorizing a community. And second prize, if you can get it, is maybe we can get some more information to feed on into the panopticon for when we decide to fully launch fascism 2.0 once it exits beta and makes it into public release, then we've got information to feed the machine. We know that ICE is using information from big databases, as 404 Media reported last week, which we talked about, to assist in terrorizing these communities. So there's no reason to think that if you give the government this voter data, it's not going to be used against you in some way. Like right now it's immigration enforcement, but tomorrow it might be radical leftists and domestic terrorists, and a domestic terrorist is anything that we say it is, anyone who disagrees with us. Anyone who doesn't agree with our fucking American right-wing Christian family values, Christian nationalist family values. So that could start including political dissidents, it could start including Democrats, it could start including mutual aid organizations. Like, you don't have to be fucking brilliant to see where this is going, right? Like, you don't have, it's not some 12D masterful, Star Trek chess with 3 levels to figure out what the fuck is going on here. They're being pretty transparent about it, right?
And, it's not like it's a revelation either. This is all stuff that was either laid out explicitly or, what would you call, the mission statement was crafted in Project 2025. This is all stuff that, how could we possibly see this coming? It's like, bro,
because they wrote it down.
They fucking wrote it down in a 1,000-page manifesto, for God's sake.
They literally scrawled out their fucking, Unabomber manifesto prior to the election, and everyone's like, I don't know, seems like we should send him some fertilizer. He seems like he knows what he's doing. But we don't want Kamala, though. Oh, she laughs weird. Ugh. Weird. She's so lame. Let's go for the authoritarian fascist instead.
I watched a clip from Sean Ryan this week, who's a sort of conservative YouTuber who, does a lot of interviews and that kind of thing. Anyway,
for research.
Yeah.
Keeping tabs. Or is it you're just getting served that stuff?
Bit of both.
In your
so
I
used to watch
because of your face, because of how you look.
So he started off he used to interview, when he was, I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, he was interviewing a lot of vets, and they'd have some really interesting guests on about the war in Afghanistan, really honest interviews.
That's how they get you out and through the military stuff.
And then it was bro, he's got the aliens guy on, and it's do you know what I mean? It
just went full Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Anyway, so we had a guy on there so he has a variety of guests now, not just defense people. And he had a guy on there talking about the bond market and how this guy was really worried about the fact that the US is going to financially implode and that basically
not worried about the fascism that's taking over the streets, but what about the money?
What
about the
money?
money?
And he was basically like, and it's not a bad, like, he's not wrong. The US is spending a couple of trillion more than it's earning, basically, and that if the bond market fails, then
maybe you don't need to quintuple the budget of ICE and make it equivalent to the Israeli army in terms of its budget. Maybe you could cut back on that.
And this was
a couple of other $1 trillion of bullshit that they spend on military nonsense.
This was the interesting thing. They were like, Sean was like, the interviewer was like, what do we do? And I don't know. We just, we spend so much on Medicare and Medicaid, but if we cut that off, like, people are going to be, people rely on that. So he pointed out very rightly that people are relying on all these payments. But things like that, things like maybe we don't need.
How about the fact that the Pentagon hasn't succeeded in passing an audit for the last 8 years, and they don't know where 60% of the fucking money goes? I don't know. And then, maybe that. Maybe start there. Maybe start with some of the big ticket items.
So it's like, well, what do we do? And he's like, I don't know, but like, I think we just have to go back to our values. He goes, I'm a man of faith, and like just started talking about the fundamental Christian values of the US, and that if we pray together and we come together, that they'll get through it. And I was like, that's not a plan, man.
Pray the debt away.
That's not a plan. And look, he was
just as good as praying the gay away. It works just as well.
What he was saying was, they need to come together and find some common ground and agree on things, right? But the way he framed it was like, let's do that around church and prayer, and that will be the and through doing that, we'll work it out. I was like, I don't.
I've always said, Adam, the problem with America, not enough church.
Not a plan.
Not enough church in America. That's the problem.
That's not a plan, bro. Like,
you'll need Jesus. You'll need Jesus as your forensic accountant.
I was going to transition to Tony Abbott, but that's probably not exactly.
Speaking of lunatics, Tony Abbott gets fucking involved for some reason in the Liberal leadership battle. So as keen-eared listeners of the podcast will know, there has been a slight difference of opinion in the coalition of late.
Yeah.
It's kind of a no-alition now, to be honest. So basically what happened is, they're trial separation. Just going to see how it goes, and see what happens next. Just vibes. Just suss it out. So there's been a bit of competition in the news media, privately and publicly, about the private goings on of the Liberal Party, and because they're all such messy fucking bitches, we know step by step everything that's been fucking happening.
Thing that's been happening.
And there was a bit of a stoush over who would challenge Sussan Ley from the Conservative side of the Liberal Party for the leadership, whether it would be Andrew Hastie, who's the young arch right-wing Conservative shithead, or Angus Taylor, who's the old arch right-wing Conservative shithead. And Tony Abbott, never one for sniping or white-anting, waded into the debate unprompted and said, turns out you guys need to sort your shit out and pick a Conservative, which did not help at all, because that's what the Conservatives were very publicly doing, was trying to pick which Conservative was going to go up against Sussan Ley. And Tony Abbott has come back to them with the helpful advice of, you should pick one, which is great. I mean, that's why he was a Rhodes Scholar. Man's a genius. Former PM. Guys are brilliant. He's so good.
This has developed a bit this week. And so what happened yesterday or the day before, Friday it might have been. So they had, there was a funeral, and I can only remember the person who has passed away. I think it was Katie Allen.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's right.
Who's a former colleague of theirs, and there was a funeral happening. She was a member of Parliament, passed away. Her funeral was on late last week, and it was in Melbourne. Anyway, so there is footage and several photographs of a meeting in suburban.
They were there for the funeral, and they're like,
Melbourne.
While we're all here, let's just get together and have a little tete-a-tete to work out how we're going to burn our party alive.
And it was literally...
They're such fucking ghoul. It was like
the mafia.
It's a friend and colleague's
funeral. It was like
funeral.
the mafia, and they're rocking up at a house, apropos of nothing, in their suits,
Na 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 na.
Andrew Hasty
na,
gets out of his car with like a posse.
na, 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 na,
And then you've got you got like
na.
Michael Sukkar there and like some other power brokers trying to like, because apparently Andrew Hasty and Angus Taylor, since Angus Taylor has been back in the country, have been talking about it. And then both of them have realised they're both going, well, no, I want it.
It's the last season of Succession where the kids are all in the same room going, I think it should be me.
Yeah.
And then Ken goes, but I think it should be me. And then Shiv goes, but I think, hear me out, it should be me.
Literally. Anyway, it became very apparent, according to sources, that David Spears is very, very certain of.
Texting people in the room, just sorry guys, yeah, no, go ahead, just texting with David Spears so this makes the 7:30 report tonight.
Literally. Like this so-called, they looked at it like it was made to look from the pictures like it was meant to be some sort of clandestine meeting that was like, there's photos of it. Like it's not secret.
Literally being broadcast.
So that in this meeting, Hasty's crew basically came out and realised that they didn't have the numbers. So in that meeting, they actually thrashed out the numbers, and they became very apparent that, unfortunately for Hasty, that Angus Taylor still has the majority of the Conservatives faction on his side and doesn't have the actual numbers to do it. So he's now formally announced through his proxies that he will not be contesting the leadership, which leaves Angus Taylor in play. Now, Angus Taylor himself is still... This is the best part. Angus Taylor is still a shadow minister for Sussan Ley.
Yeah.
And hasn't said anything publicly. And so this whole thing happened. People have been photographed. The people who came out of the meeting for Hasty have texted at ABC journalists, told them what's happening, and then they all went to the funeral.
I think
They all went to the funeral together.
I think the film Gladiator would have ended much earlier if Commodus knew immediately that everyone was plotting against him. Like it's it takes up most of the third act of the film where Commodus is like trying to unwind the Roman senators' plot against him, and he finally figures it out just in the nick of time, right before Maximus goes off and raises his army. It's like the film would have been over in an hour and 20 if these guys were involved, because they would have just be like, yo, Commodus, we're plotting against you. And he'd be like, death to all of you guys immediately. There would be no film. It wouldn't even be feature length. It'd be an hour and 20 at most.
And so we're in this situation now where everyone just sat awkwardly at the funeral and I guess went about their grieving and whatever else. But like,
yeah, it sounds like they were really, really invested.
Really invested in the fact that they're there for their colleague, a public servant of Australia. Anyway, don't get me started.
It's like a scene out of Death of Stalin.
Literally.
Where they're, at a funeral, and then like Andrew Hasty's like tapping him on the shoulder, I'll fucking have you, mate. Like, you're cooked. Like,
great film, by the way. Watch Death of Stalin. Amazing.
Death of Stalin. Immaculate.
But now they're saying, this is the latest development, like today, and Sussan Ley, by the way, has been very strongly banged. I've got the full support of my team, and I'm not backing down.
I've got the full support of the moderates, of which there are 14. So numerically insignificant.
Yeah, there's like 28, and because you got to add in both the senators as well as the lower house, right? So that's how
you don't have the votes. You don't have the votes. You got to go up for leadership's bill, and you don't have the votes.
So now they're saying though they're not going to actually. Because turns out they've got to go back to Parliament tomorrow and do business, which means you actually do need to still have a shadow. Like they've just reassigned all the roles very hurriedly after the Nationals left.
Yes,
and inflation has just ticked up, which is what you would be, if you're the opposition, would be grabbing a hold of that and just throttling.
Just hitting the government with a fucking hammer if you knew anything about doing what it is the fuck you are supposed to be doing, right?
So they have realised we probably can't do a spill Monday, Tuesday next week because we really should be using that time.
Wednesday's no good for me, actually. I've got a thing with the kids. So could we maybe how do we think about Thursday for rending the soul of our party in twain?
Anyway, meanwhile, the Nationals are going through a leadership split. some random, and I can't remember the guy's bloody name. Where is it?
Colin Boyce.
Colin Boyce, who's a sort of solo...
everyone's favourite. Colin, definitely know who he is, Boyce.
No one knows who he is. But anyway, he has kind of... He's been on the outs, basically. Kind of a fringe right-wing figure of the National Party. He called a spill.
Now, and that's saying something. To be a fringe right-wing finger of the National Party.
He called a spill, allegedly to sort of... Because he's not happy with the way things were run over the last, 2 weeks or whatever.
Well, the pull quote is, the National Party is committing political suicide by removing itself from the coalition, which, yeah, based. Like, slay, Queen. Like, yeah, correct.
No one expects him to win that spill or to even stand necessarily, but he's calling it. So he's using it as an area. So basically, the Nationals have to do their spill. They have to work out.
Do these cunts ever work? Like, I've got so much stuff to do all the time at my job, like, without ever thinking about, like, knifing my manager and then, like, playing ring around, musical chairs with the fucking positions and cabinet portfolios. Like, do these cunts ever work?
So they have to do their spill. So I guess the point being here is no one's in a position to actually really effectively act as the opposition at the moment. So they're going to put off the Liberals.
Anthony Albanese, leader supreme.
Anyway, so Ted O'Brien, who's the current shadow treasurer, apparently he was on Insiders this morning, and God bless him, he was trying so hard. He's been apparently trying to, like, single-handedly, like, patch the coalition back together again, but he can't do anything because the Nationals are doing their own leadership spill. So we kind of have to wait for that to happen before Sussan Ley and David Littleproud can sit down and have a conversation. But he said that they're going to talk this week, apparently, after the spills happened.
But all of this was, like, so foreseeable. So all of this is the fallout of the legislation that occurred in the wake of the Bondi shooting, right?
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. Sussan Ley and the Liberals and the coalition immediately insist on very speedy legislation, which she knows for a fact will wedge her and the coalition. They push for the legislation. The legislation arrives. They help to pass the legislation. The coalition is now wedged. Am I understanding that timeline of events correctly? Like,
so they thought the thinking. It's like a computer that can only think through 2 of the 3 steps. So they thought through steps 1 and 2, and they did not actually think of step. It's the dumbest chess game you've ever played.
It's checkers.
I don't think it's even checkers, bro. I think it's like snakes and ladders. Like, you roll the dice and see what happens.
Anthony Albanese is playing normal 3D chess, and Sussan Ley is playing checkers.
Oh, I don't know about checkers, man. I think it's even simpler. I think it's a game of snakes and ladders, and they've rolled the dice, so whatever they land on is whatever they land on.
It's just unreal. Like,
are you guys
grown-ups? How is this possible?
Is to actually roll the dice and play a move. It's not even like they know where the move is going to go. Do you know what I mean? Anyway.
So one's thinking literally not even one step ahead.
Look, and this is all taking away from the key headline this week that inflation's ticked up, and it's the second time it's ticked up, I think, in however many months, as far as I'm aware.
The last couple of months. Yeah.
Which is above. So it's now above the RBA's target band, which makes a rate
between
hike.
2 and So ideally they want it between 2 and 3%, depending on which metrics of inflation you're looking at. Inflation for the year is now looking like it's going to be 3.7%, or if you're just looking at core inflation, 3.4%. So above the range. And so it's widely expected now that the RBA is going to raise interest rates at the next meeting this week or the next week or whenever it is. So, if you were a political party that was in opposition while that was happening, you would think that you would organize, get together, and hammer the government for economic mismanagement. Like, it's a perfect, and there's been like,
it's a gimme. It's a gimme. Like,
it's a gimme. Like, Anthony Albanese's like, oh, lucky boys, got away with that one.
There's other games that are being played apparently at the moment, according to Ted O'Brien, is that because if you are formally the opposition in Parliament, you get an extra budgetary allowance for staff. And of course, as the Nationals, if they're no longer part of the opposition, they lose all their staff. So anyway, they're freaking out now about their resources.
Think about Barnaby Joyce's next wife, Adam. They got to keep their staff. Although he's part of the One Nation now.
One Nation. Anyway, so, in terms of inflation, the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, was saying this week that it's actually not the budget's fault. It's like other stuff. But Ted O'Brien pointed out, and this is, again, credit to him, he was trying so hard. His opinion was that the amount of discretionary spending why we say discretionary spending with things like childcare subsidies have contributed to inflation.
More for the military-industrial complex. Nom, 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 nom.
Well, apparently, this is an interesting one. Someone said on the Insiders today that, what happened was that they announced this childcare subsidy, and then now childcare fees have all gone up, which is kind of similar to what's been happening with the housing market, right? Like
that's what happens when you create a demand-side subsidy, is that more money flows into the market, there's more demand, prices inevitably go up. I understand what they're trying to do by increasing the subsidy, but as with childcare and so many other things, creating in housing market and all this sort of stuff, creating additional demand subsidies for a product that is already in high demand can really long-term only have one consequence, which is to drive costs up.
And keep in mind, this is Ted O'Brien's opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. I haven't actually seen any of the numbers. I haven't seen any of the inflation data, so I don't know if that's true, but that's what they were sort of talking about today. Again, sure. I have a really active Sunday morning. I sat down, had a coffee, and then watched news for an hour because I'm a cool guy.
Cool guys. So I'm just cool guys in our 30s. That's us. Yep. Friend of the show, Polyverse, is writing in, at what point in this mess does One Nation become the new opposition and then form their own coalition? Well, Polyverse, approximately 2 years from now when there's an election. That's when that'll happen.
And this same thing's happening in the UK. The Reform Party
with Reform,
are exactly a very similar situation to One Nation, right? The key
basically,
thing for these parties
the left wing is in power and the right wing is so fractious and tripping over their balls. They can't seem to get anything together. One Nation, as with Reform, has had a recent boost in the polls to the extent to which Pauline Hanson's One Nation's Pauline Hanson is polling at 22% of the national primary vote. Now, thankfully, the racists are scattered. We don't have large enclaves in cities, to the extent to which they might be able to, form a bunch of seats in Parliament. But what it does show is a really intense and growing dissatisfaction with the Conservative movement, and those voters can really only go in one direction. They're not going to vote for Labor because Labor fucking reg under the bed, but what they will vote for is, little fish and chip shop owner Pauline Hanson and her racist cabal of shitheads. So,
and if that's when we say fish and chip shop owner, most people won't know. Before she got into Parliament, she was a fish and chip shop owner, so that's where she's from. So the question is, over the next 2 years, do Reform and although I think the UK election's sooner than that.
No, I think they do every
fall.
5.
Oh, yeah, it's longer.
5 years, I think.
Australia's got this weird 3-year system.
So I think they're like 3 years away for them from their next election.
So, do these fringe parties hold and grow that momentum, or do they?
But there's a bunch of like local council elections and things like that where Reform have taken over and have run the fucking councils into the ground. So like we see what this kind of right-wing populist governance does when it's in practice. And like does not deliver any of the populist things that they say that they're going to deliver. They're just shit at it and also fascist. So it's like bad government and a dose of racism. And so it's entirely possible that if the coalition continues to disintegrate at this rate here in Australia, that you could be looking at a situation where if One Nation picks up a number of seats, they and the coalition continues to bleed them, and if they're separated from One Nation, from the Nationals, you might have a situation where you've got more seats in One Nation than you do in the Liberal Party, which would make them the de facto opposition.
Maybe not the Liberal Party. I would suggest, like, it depends. Here's the thing. It depends on who's running. I would say they'd be targeting something the size of the Nationals, because it's going to be rural seats. And this is where I'm not sure how it's going to work, because if you've got Nationals, the Nationals and One Nation, are they going to run against each other in these rural seats?
I mean, potentially. I mean, split the crazy vote.
Or is it, is the swing that much that, outer suburban seats now start to become a One Nation? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know.
So we're spitballing.
What would be really scary is if they team up and you've got the One Nationals as the coalition, as you said.
Yes,
So
it's the One Nationals, everyone run for the hills. That's not actually my idea. I stole that.
well, don't run for the hills. That's where they all are.
Now, speaking of, we've talked about how the coalition's sort of party room is as leaky as the Titanic. One of the leakiest leakers, who's not actually in the party anymore, but still, likes to get a TV spot here and there, is Malcolm Turnbull, because he speaks good.
Well, yeah, it does. He speaks all right.
He speaks good. Look, I will say Malcolm Turnbull, as one of the Liberal moderates, former Liberal moderates, I'd say he's very statesmanlike. However, he's a messy bitch.
Malcolm Turnbull loves chatting shit and taking names, and he's all out of names. So here's Malcolm Turnbull being interviewed by The Guardian this week. He references the Mark Carney stuff, as well as Sussan Ley and the whole disintegration of the party, which he once led.
King Albanese and blaming the government for the attack, what she should have said. But by the next morning, she was swept up in this sort of right-wing media outrage cycle, and she and her colleagues started attacking Albanese and blaming the government for the attack, which was disgraceful and wrong. I mean, just simply factually wrong. And anyone who had any familiarity with national security, and she does, would have known it was wrong. So they then pressured Albanese first to have the Royal Commission to bring back Parliament, to introduce legislation. So he was bustled to bring the Parliament back in a screaming hurry to introduce legislation which really deserves much more careful consideration in a rush. And what was the topics of that legislation? Guns, absolutely combustible issue with the National Party and the regional libs in particular, and of course hate speech or limiting speech to, prevent hate speech, which again, and Sussan understands the history of this, she was there, which has always been a combustible issue within the coalition parties. So it's hardly surprising that they blew up over it. But, if she had taken the same approach Kelly Sloan did in New South Wales and supported the government, said we'll work through it together, she'd taken the same approach Kim Beazley did after the Port Arthur massacre, this wouldn't have happened. So, Sussan's been portrayed as very much the victim of the, unreasonable David Littleproud, and I'm not suggesting he's without fault or blame or blemish. Plenty of blame to go around. But this situation was created by the opposition, and Sussan in particular, taking what should have been a bipartisan moment of national unity and turning it into a very partisan political fight. Well, I thought Mark Carney's speech in Davos was outstanding, and I'd encourage everyone to read it and watch it. Yes, I think the Australian Prime Minister needs to give a similar speech, which is essentially acknowledging that the world has changed. I mean, one of the Labor Party cabinet ministers said to me the other day, he said, the best thing that has ever happened to the Australian Labor Party is Sky News. And he said they've just dragged the Liberal Party off into this, crazy zone. I mean, you said earlier that I've described Donald Trump as a bully. I mean, that is not a criticism of him. That is just a statement of fact. I mean, that is he makes no bones about that. He says might is right. He says power determines what happens in the world. This is the time to really have a tour of the horizon, set out, this is the world we live in. I mean, one of the things that Albanese has got to explain is why we are becoming more and more dependent on the United States via AUKUS and sending them so much money in circumstances where we have no certainty of ever getting any submarines, and putting everything into this US alliance at a time when the Americans are saying quite clearly, you have got to do more for yourself. You can't rely on us.
So it's funny, they get him on, all these. That was for the Guardian. He was doing
And we need someone to take a big sloppy shit on the Liberal Party. Is Malcolm available?
Yeah, literally.
Or?
It's literally like, who can we get to bitch about Trump? Who can we get to bitch about the Liberal Party? And Malcolm gets pulled out for all these speaking opportunities. That was with the Guardian he was speaking with.
And we'll link the full video in the show notes. Yeah, just for context, again, I have edited that down just for brevity.
Again, interesting though, Parliament's so leaky. Oh yeah, I was speaking to a Labor cabinet minister the other day. Just what?
They're all texting each other. They all fucking go play polo together or whatever the fuck it is these rich fucks do. Like, yeah, they're all. It's I think it was a George Carlin joke where he said, "It's a rich people's club and you ain't in it." Like they're in it together, right? Like that's the club. Is Canberra? Is Parliament, right?
Yes, the inner circle out of the circle, I guess. Is there anything else that you wanted to sort of draw on there? I know you'd sort of done some prep on that.
Well, I just just wanted to highlight the fact that Malcolm Turnbull agrees with me that we're never getting a fucking submarine. Like I said it last week on the show. Like it really, you have to wonder why it is that we are forming closer ties with the United States when they're becoming such a fucking basket case. Like we really need to reevaluate our strategic positioning with them and China and see, does this alliance really suit us anymore? Especially like, it really does seem like, I don't want to say like making the Nazi Germany comparison again, but it's like, you're aligned with a country that is descending into some form of, less liberal democracy, fascist authoritarian state. Like, does it make sense for us to be like, how will history judge us in the future when we talk about this time period? It'll be like, and as it was clear that the American government was descending into fascism, Australia decided to send them $900 million for submarines they knew they were never going to fucking get to please the mad boy king, to please King Joffrey, before he started lopping off heads. Like, I think we really need to think about what this is going to look like long term for us.
I mean, the thing is, it's like with any long-term project. We've already cancelled. This is the second submarine long-term project that we're into now, after much discussion around the previous ones.
There was the diesel ones that we cancelled for AUKUS, and now we're into AUKUS, and it's like 10 years later.
We pissed the French off to no end. Took ages to bloody patch that relationship. And
we need to get cool Macron back on the phone.
Like,
get your glasses on. Hey, Macron. Hey, buddy. How's it going? We were after some of those diesel subs. You still got some of those lying around? How you doing?
The thing is that, like, if we were to cancel AUKUS, like, yes, okay, maybe we save a couple of $100 billion somewhere.
What's 400 billion between friends?
We would then have to renegotiate another contract, probably back for diesel subs again. And we'd still have to fork out.
Get Elon on the phone. See if we can get one of those little electric subs that he offered to rescue the Thailand cave flood boys with. Yeah. So can we get a bigger version of that?
We are.
Has Tesla got anything in the tank for one of those?
We are actually looking at underwater drones as a capability, but
naturally, cool. Cool.
Yeah,
we got a contract with Palantir, hopefully, to fucking
do that,
man. To direct the firing of those unmanned drones onto human combatants. I hope so.
I guess my point being is, even if we cancel AUKUS, it's still gonna be a shit situation. So we're still gonna have to fork out another $100 billion for a new project.
Just get some drones. Put some drones up in the air. Just go, China, come on, don't invade. We've got heaps of drones. Come on, don't do it.
Anyway, speaking of China, one of Anthony Albanese's key election promises was to take back control of the port of Darwin. So Darwin, many years ago, was offered up to a Chinese firm, headed up by a Chinese billionaire, for a 99-year lease at the cost of, I think it was like $300 million or something. Like, it wasn't even that much, really, in the scheme of things. A 99-year lease for, oh my God, $350 million.
Yeah, it's because the port was losing money and it was a liability. And so the government was like, let's fucking fuck it off to someone else and they can pay for it and upgrade it. And yeah, that I think that was the idea. It was like, oh, it's how smart are we? We're fucking privatizing. Oh, look at us. Look at the clever boys in the coalition privatising, making gains, restoring budget surpluses. What's that? We haven't had a budget surplus in 10 years. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. We're with shrewd economic managers selling off critical national defence.
Yes. And it was sold off back in 2015. So that would have been what the Abbott government, I imagine. Abbott or Turnbull, depending on what point that was. But anyway, I think it was the Northern Territory government that negotiated, and then the federal government just like rubber stamped it, basically.
Ticked it off, yeah.
Anyway, so Albanese's sticking to his guns. He still wants to get it back. But the Chinese ambassador to Australia, who occasionally comes out and says things very publicly in very public press conferences that have been well populated, and anyway.
So Tony Abbott was Prime Minister until September in 2015. So it depends when it happened in the year. But yeah, it was either one or the other.
The Chinese ambassador had a press conference this week basically being like, you guys are shit cunts if you do this. to paraphrase him, he said it's unethical and it is no way to do business.
The ambassador said, quote, "We will see when it is time for us to say something, do something, to reflect the Chinese government's position and protect our Chinese companies' legitimate interests," he said, stone-faced.
He said,
whilst patting a baseball bat into his palm. Hey, it's a nice country here. You gotta be ashamed if something happened to it.
And he said as well, when you're losing money, you want to lease it to a foreign company, and when it's making money, you want to take it back?
Yeah, which, I mean, fair. Yeah, yeah basically.
Yeah. Ambassador said that Beijing would take measures to defend Landbridges. Landbridge is the company that owns it. Landbridge's interests if the Australian government tried to forcibly alter the lease agreement. So the way that would work, I guess, would be there'd be a contract, and then obviously that they're bound by that contract, but the government would pass legislation that would override that contract. Is basically how that would have to work, to my understanding, anyway, of how these things work.
They're nationalising the oil.
Anyway, so I just thought that was interesting this week that I forgot it was an election promise, and at the time I was like, this makes a lot of sense, and now since everything that's happened with Trump,
we might be inviting him in soon to defend us against the United States. So who knows?
Believe it. It was a dumb decision. I don't know why they signed that off back. That was back when
it's like a 99-year lease or something. It's like for a crazy long time. I get it.
Dumb.
Look, but I mean, they've done studies into it, and they've said we don't think that there's any strategic, disadvantage to Australia in having this here. Including one of those studies was commissioned by Anthony Albanese himself. But I agree that it's a bad look.
It's the optics of it.
China own a key piece of infrastructure in an Australian, in a key sort of Australian
strategic
location. Like, I get it, it's a bad look, but
that's interesting.
Chief amongst our concerns right now, probably not.
The reviews, it's a good point actually. The reviews did say that there is the risk.
You can't use the port. It's Chinese. Like, oh fuck, we can't use it. It's Chinese now. Like, what's going to happen?
It's not like it's owned by the Chinese government. It's a separate company, although you'd argue.
A Chinese company, but as we know, Chinese government has restrictions in place as to part government ownership of entities.
Yeah.
That are headquartered in China, and we all know that there's extensive collaboration between Chinese companies and the Chinese government. It's not the same thing as Halliburton just going off and doing whatever the fuck they want around the world. China has a say in what this Chinese company does with this port in Darwin. So,
these reviews did say that there's no sort of the strategic risk is low, I think, is kind of the inference that they were saying. So,
how are we going to put the boats in the water? All the signs are in Mandarin. It's still a port. You can still, I don't know. It
still works.
Still works.
Boats still go there. So that's been the world this week, which, there's some funny things in there, but also some horrible stuff. So that's just the world as it is now.
That's just the way it be. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world that have, do, or ever will exist at our handles at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flippin' TikTok. We are going hard on the clips on TikTok. So get on the TikTok, get it in you at Unnatural Show. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram at George Tsipos.
Don't follow me online because I'll find you and no, I won't do that.
Don't follow him. He's had his identity stolen. He's very touchy about it. Please don't follow him.
Don't follow me.
He will tell you off if you tag him in something.
You can, although you can follow me to Darwin though, where I'll take a tinny out to the port of Darwin, do some fishing, and just express my freedom of navigation. Just a freedom of navigation.
Yep. Just navigating freely
through the port of Darwin.
Is that a battleship?
Shh.
Is that a frigate? What is that?
It's just my tinny. Just my tinny with my friend Ralph.
Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
I don't have a friend called Ralph. I don't have any friends.
Oh, buddy. What a sad way to finish the episode.